All right, welcome back. We can't complain about improv and Fightcast too much. So I thought we would talk today with the Bruce. I, of course, the host NC. Of course, right now the reenact not the reenactment, but the D&D world, the nerd world, is on fire with Wizards of the Corrupt, and I've been kind of out of that since I left Florida, but I kind of try to keep tabs because I am working on a not a D&D but a D20 interchangeable scenario system for the channel regarding historical scenarios. But how in depth and knowledgeable about the situation are you?
Me specifically,
Yeah.
been gaming since the 1970s. I remember when there was a basic edition and an advanced edition before there was even a first edition of D&D.
Hmm.
So I have run all sorts of games of all different types since then to now. Um, and I've watched different editions of games happen, sometimes to the chagrin of people who have been playing for a long time. Uh, and basically, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But I think we're going to be talking about the a time when it's not today.
Yep. If fourth and fifth edition wasn't enough, they had to come out with this. So there was a Reddit post that really did it right, but I've also got permanently banned from Reddit, so I can't pull it up. But expressing opinions that everybody else expresses. But effectively, to my knowledge, the situation is that Wizard of the Coast saw that all these other app games and companies, corporations, and capitalism are doing all this microtransaction business. You know, like Diablo Immortal, making like 10 million a day probably, and basically milking everybody for what we're worth in a time where we're nobody except for the rich people even have any money. And they're like, "Well, I want some of that, even though it's a tabletop game that you purchase, or at least should be able to purchase once, right? Except for all the books." And I guess they decided that they don't want anybody having anything to do with D&D anymore, and decided to go full with Disney, full Disney with the copyrights, trademarks, stuff that I think believe way back when that they had open so that people could do modified games. Because I mean, D&D itself is just a D20 system, and it's not the end of the world. It's just Wizard of the Coast D&D, and there was fan backlash. Is that pretty much about right?
I think that is. I don't think necessarily this could be blamed on like a Disneyfication. I think that this is something uh, that's been happening all across the spectrum from every type of entertainment that's out there today. Unfortunately, you know, and again, is this from greed? I think that this is actually from a much. I know that there is greed as being part of it, but I really think that it is people who are out of touch with the people that they're making the product for, or the people who and this is in any fandom. And I've seen a lot of the same responses from wizards and people who are defending wizards, uh, specifically that I've seen in other entertainment franchises of people who were fans or supporters of the franchises for long periods of time, and they make a drastic change. And in Wizards, this is more, in my opinion, of a it's a disconnect and a greed change. Like they've been doing a lot of things really poorly. Um, you could say what you want about 5e. I actually think 5e is I think the basis of 5e is pretty good for bringing in new players and helping them understand it. Um, I say that up to a certain point because at a certain point, Wizards kind of went off the rails, and I want to say it was probably around when they decided to try their whole idea of what I'll term 5.5e, where they started changing the rules, and then they wanted you to buy the books to update your rules going on from around Witchlight, I think is a good time period. I also think the other problem is Wizards, you are building a game system. It is not on you to tell the players what they can and cannot do. That is up to the game masters and the players session zero. That is really what it is up to. You need to stop making these blanket statements and seeing things that aren't there from a perspective of 30 years past forward and trying to correct it. That's one main problem. The greed is the other problem. Um, if Wizards was producing content or game mechanics that were worth buying, they wouldn't be in the trouble they are in needing to try to make money the way they are. And unfortunately, I was just having this conversation on my other podcast this morning, slightly about it. But I think what Wizards really suffered from two products that just completely failed, in my opinion, were Ghost of Saltmarsh, because there was ship-to-ship combat that was in there, and the ship-to-ship combat rules were really just added as an afterthought, almost like, you guys will figure it out. Here you go. With Spelljammer's rules for ship-to-ship combat, which Spelljammer is dedicated to that sort of thing, were terrible. They're in a whole bunch of different places. There's not like a section, like there should have been a book devoted to this sort of thing if you wanted to bring it in. Also, that system didn't have any good, really well established lore in it. I think I'm going to say something that's going to be divisive here, but I think under these circumstances, they're not going by merit-based people who know the lore, who know what they're talking about, and who are writing well. They're not going by that. They're getting people in who are either disconnected, don't really understand what's going on, and don't want to and don't necessarily want to do anything more than make what they consider content. Now, the OGL 1.1, which I'm sure we'll get into later, that or whatever it is now, is really terrible on a lot of points, and this is where I think the main failure comes in. Again, it's the disconnect. It's their attempt to force something they think down everybody's throats, whereas it should be a decision that's left up to the DM and gamers, as well as the fact that there's about things that are being viewed through their specific lens, and they really shouldn't, because that's not where this stuff came from.
Yeah. I've got a couple of Reddit posts up regarding the open game license, which took me until I pulled this up to realize it is open game license. Because people keep saying OGL, and I'm terrible with letters. But yeah, it sounds a lot like the fact that everyone else is making billions of dollars, like Diablo is milking it for all it's worth with their pay to exist everything. And right now, more than ever, Wizards of the Coast and D&D in general is probably at its peak, probably at its most popular. You got things like Critical Role, which I don't watch. I don't really watch anything D&D on YouTube. Nothing against them. I mostly watch people that go to Disney to eat the food, which is very out of character. But once I'm back
Nothing
down
better
there,
than a $24 hamburger that you could have gotten for $4.
Exactly. So, which is why when I come back down there, I need to eat some Disney food to get it out of my system. But get some $10 cupcakes. But so there's so much going on, and so much that they're probably not capable of capitalizing on. And so my sort of vague, kind of out of it opinion is that they're trying to capitalize on all the money they're not getting and trying to control this system that's pretty much been out of their hands since the D&D started. Since I mean, it is supposed to be like that slogan, "Power to the players."
Mhm.
That's pretty much what tabletop gaming is. It's supposed to be for us, by us, sell to us, and then we take care of the rest. You can give us rule books and all this hip rocket jazz meringue pie, but I know the group that I was with, we had adjusted rules for things kind of mixing 3.5 with like Pathfinder, and some people made up their own rules because they didn't know how to play. But
Homebrewing,
you
for
know,
lack of a better term.
hmm just kind of taking those hot shots. Anywho, um, but they're all good people, and the person was still a good person. Just crazy. But anywho, um, so that's my kind of take on this. The open game license. If I can read from Reddit here for a second, because I have no clue what the heck, right? Not the nitty gritty at the least. So I want to kind of verbatim. And this isn't the post that I had. This is just what I've gotten. It's very detailed and very very well written. By Zool Media, the two U's, whatever that pronunciation really is. But
ZUUL?
XUUL Media,
Ah,
all one word, but the M is capitalized because you can't. I guess you can't separate words on Reddit. Can't say words on Reddit either. You get permanently banned by certain moderators. But anywho,
well, just
so
remember, much like Twitter, Reddit isn't
hmm
real life, and none of these
yep,
people would have these conversations with you sitting down.
hmm
It's why I have no use really for either. The only thing I use Reddit for is if somebody has a tech base, like for a game that I'm having a difficulty with. Reddit's actually very good with a tech user base of finding
yeah.
and reporting how to fix things. But as far as Reddit as a news source,
No, no. Well, give or take. But you really gotta, I think, with everything, sift through the garbage to get the facts. But Reddit, now that I'm banned, is honestly the best I've ever had it. I don't care what subs I subscribe to because people can see your subs, and so I try to whatever. And I don't mean like porn. I just mean just whatever. Here's the goofy stuff. Here's the cringe stuff. Just get it all in there. But I enjoy just cruising my subreddits and getting whatever information or whatever out of it without acting on the need to respond, whether it's good or bad, especially if it's a paleontology one. It's probably bad. Uh, or the Viking one, where the people post pictures of them from the TV show Vikings and say that's Viking, or the Helm of Awe. But that's off topic. The open game license, as verbatim from Zool Media on Reddit, posted 12 days ago, is a copyright license that allows third-party creators to use basic rules and aspects from the tabletop game Dungeons and Dragons. That is owned by, of course, Wizards of the Coast, which a lot of people don't know. They also did the first couple Pokemon card packs. This essentially open sources a lot of the core mechanics of the game, so third parties can create and distribute content legally. Creators are allowed to monetize some of the content, which I think is the big issue here, even that relating to specifically to Wizards of the Coast properties. This is notable as it is completely different from fan content policy, which I won't go over because I don't need to be clicking more links. In essence, the OGL allows creators to use aspects of D&D for their own creations while allowing Wizards of the Coast to still own D&D. This has led to a massive amount of interest around D&D. As I've mentioned, it's probably at its peak now that we have 8 billion people on the planet and they all seem to play D&D to some extent. And now I've lost my place. Or an entire little industry has popped up making, selling, or distributing products related to the game. This has led to a lot of growth for D&D in general. While there are systems that allow Wizards of the Coast to get a cut of some of this content, it is also true that some fan-made content did compete directly with products sold by Wizards of the Coast. The game Pathfinder, which a lot of people find a lot better or a lot more streamlined. I know yourself, at least when we last played, did,
Mhm.
has ties to the system, as it is heavily inspired by 3.5, my preferred edition of D&D. And recently, they have announced a plan to create a revision of the D&D rules titled 1 D&D. This overhauls the overhaul. That was an accent. Overhauls the rules is meant to update, modernize, and modify the gameplay from the current uh, fifth edition that was released in 2014. That's a while ago. And now the new license, the OGL 1.1, which you described, along with this change, which is widgets, Wizards of the Coast stated they would update the OGL. While the OGL has been tweaked in the past, it has not had a major revision uh, since its creation in 2000. And I'm still quoting Zool Media or Zool Media, however it's pronounced, assuming they ever find this podcast. The OGL 1.1 was recently leaked, and it made a lot of changes that people are not happy about. For one, the original license used for all the previous editions of D&D is "quote unquote" no longer authorized license agreement. This means no new content can be released, even for old editions. Many publishers will be required to overhaul their entire products and distribution in order to comply with the updated rules. The new license is more restrictive as it only allows for creation of role playing games and supplements in printed media and static electronic file formats. In addition, the OGL states that if you intend to make money, quote unquote, no matter how much money you believe your product will make, you must register with with us. That was weirdly written. Register with us any new licensed work you intend to offer for sale, including a description of licensed work. We'll also ask for your contact info on where you intend to publish. I speak gibberish a lot, so when I read, I tend to gibber. I should probably do the Joker thing,
Hmm.
and if I'm in character doing it, but that's also annoying. You intend to publish the licensed work and its price, among other things. This is a large change, as previously creators were not required to report to, the big tower. One other line has people worried is this, quote unquote, you own the new and original content you create. You agree to give us non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, sub-licensable, royalty-free license to use that content for any purpose. As in, anything we make that is new and original, they can take without issue, without ever having pay for it. But anything we make, we have to pay them for it.
Exactly. And it's not like it's a small payment either. I think if I remember correctly, if you do it through Kickstarter, it's a 20% royalty. If you don't do it through Kickstarter, it's a 25% royalty after 50,000.
Mhm.
And now again, I can pretty much say this, I think, openly. We're not lawyers.
No.
We are just speaking openly on this on our opinions. But I have watched several podcasts with lawyers from people who are far smarter than I am, and they even the person who originally designed the OGL was on a podcast at what it who basically gave, this is what we are doing, this is how we created it, this is what we did with the lawyers, this is why it was this way. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue.
Oh no, that's it. That's it. The user just kind of goes over the reaction, but we already know what the reaction is, and which because we are reacting to it. Consider this like a reaction video without the annoying content. But yes, I'm trying to say less. So moo, say moo instead. Uh, So that's relevant to me in the sense that I have been working on very slowly a campaign or one shots of actual historical events and people as not D&D or Pathfinder games, but using the D20 system that you can interchange into D&D or Pathfinder or what have you, Rifts, so on and so forth, or even interchange it to other things that have nothing to do with history, like the Buffy game or whatever. There's tabletop games for everything, including My Little Pony, probably. Um, Moo. So hopefully that'll be out this year. At least one of them. I'm doing the first one is the Battle of Lindisfarne, and that's kind of strange area to think about. Is if I do that and it's very specifically D20 and not D&D, but say I have a page or a small part of that file that you download, or if it make it a small like Amazon books thing for it, where you can decipher and translate to Pathfinder and then to D&D. What is their opinion of that? Is that suddenly now my work is their work and I owe them the money for it, even though it has technically nothing to do with them, which is a big happy load of BS.
Well, the big thing is you're not contractually obligated to do anything for them unless you sign on the bottom line and
Hmm.
agree to the new thing. Now, that makes a problem because the people who have already signed up for D&D 1, I'm sure, I have not, I won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. I'm sure that somewhere inside the terms of service, when you create that account, even if it's a free account, you somehow have then agreed to the 1.1 OGL. It would
Now,
only
quick
make
question,
sense.
not to interrupt, but D&D one, and you're talking about signing up. What do you mean in that regards? So do you have to go to the website and sign up like
When
an
you create
account?
an account, yes. That's what I'm guessing. Again, I have not done it, but I am almost positive that if they wanted to try to find a way to do that, they would do that, and even with a free account, you would have to basically accept their terms of service, which most likely would also include the new revision to the OGL.
Strange. I only say it because I've never made an account for anything regarding Wizards of the Coast. So,
Which just on that point on their account, when they released what it was going to look like for their account, um, the base free account was you had access to basically only hold 3 characters. You had 3 character slots. That's it, on the free account. So no more, no less. If you wanted more slots, my understanding is that it was microtransaction based. You bought extra slots if you didn't want to pay for the full, um, for the full account. Their actual cost per month for the unlimited account is $30. Now, it's $360 a year. It's a lot of money compared to some other VTTs, which are like, if you get them on sale, they're like $80 for the year, or some that are single purchase that are around like $60. Also, every single book they're now going to be producing, that Wizards is going to be producing, it is my understanding that the book prices have gone up by $10 to $15 each, but they come with a digital unlock key. So you're getting the PDF basically through their site, which
okay.
you then have to log into, which most likely, and again, I can't prove this, but if I were in the mindset of being the money making greedy bastards that they are, the minute you create an account, I would have the stipulations in there that you agree to all of our rules, including the new open game license. Also, let's say what you're talking about here, um, you wanted to run a D&D campaign on your channel. I'm sure that that's not the only monetization that you're going to get from your channel. Are they now going to basically say the fact that you have included D&D on your channel and you make more than 50,000, and this was a point I was trying to get to earlier before I was gonna before I realized I had kind of stepped on you. $50,000 for a channel is not a lot of money.
No.
It's not. Let's say that you do video games and then once a month you do a D&D podcast. Do they now consider the fact that your total income for your channel has reached their their threshold? So now they, because you've used their product, they now want a piece of your pie past that, even though it may be a very small amount of your channel.
Exactly.
The whole thing is, where does this end? If you're looking at it, let's look at it from the point that the new CEO is from was marketing for Xbox for Microsoft.
Mhm.
Gonna want microtransactions, gonna want as much money coming in as possible, gonna want as much recurring income. You cannot, and this is a disconnect here, you cannot treat tabletop gamers as if they're playing a video game. You can't treat them that way because it's that's not how it is. We are the builders of our own content. You are not continually providing us with content. It's our imaginations, it's our sweat and tears that go into doing this. It's like if I were to buy a shovel and then go dig a hole in my backyard, and
Mhm.
somebody came to me and said, "Well, we're the shovel company, and we want a part of your labor for it." That's incredibly unfair. So I think a little, I might be getting myself a little off topic here, but back to
No,
the
no.
idea of, I think this also shows a little bit of the problem in actual video gaming. The phone apps make far more money in a lot of cases than video games because of the microtransactioning.
Absolutely.
And you're starting to see that pour over into the rest of the entertainment communities. And that's, I think, what they're trying to bring here by doing this. They want money. They want to use you. You are the product. That they want to use you to create. Somebody said it. We've been their research and development for years, and now they want to monetize off of us.
Mhm.
Because if it's not for us playing D&D, D&D used to be, you went to a game shop or you had a game group that you got together, and then people bought the books as they wanted them or needed them to help things go.
Or,
That is,
download them for free.
well, you know,
Mhm.
whatever. But the thing is, if your product is good enough,
Yeah,
then people will buy the books.
exactly.
Um, I mean, I know I have a library of stuff
Yeah,
since
no,
the
I
70s.
even though I did download the 3.5 books at first to have that information, I also purchased all of them because I want them physically and I
Right,
enjoy playing with my friends. If you love something, you'll support it.
right. But I mean, Wizards is doing a lot of weird stuff. Well, look at what they did with Magic. They're now being accused of just printing mass amounts of these really high-end cards just to make money.
Mhm.
So again, they're looking. I think this is all coming from greed and a disconnect with the actual community. Honestly, this fight back that they have been getting, the fact that people mass deleted their accounts, the fact that they're getting so much hassle, the fact that now you've got multiple people bringing out their own or starting to work on their own uh,
Mhm.
systems. You've had people come out. I'm not going to mention the companies, but you've had a major company come out and say, we have retained legal counsel and we are willing to fight on the behalf of our company against all of this, like publicly. And it's a big company. Um, I think that this is the kind of pushback that a lot of people have not seen before. And in reading their statement that they put out about their response for what's been going on, I hated their statement. I absolutely hated it. It wasn't, it was like, well, you think you won, but we still won. Like, you're crapping on your community. And
Mhm.
again, the community is your best free advertising that you have had for years. You can't beat that kind of thing. Things like Critical Role or other channels out there that have that show D&D content,
Yep.
they're the ones selling your product for you.
I mean, they're the
Especially
ones that are going to get people into it.
yeah.
Like there's let me really quickly look them up because I do want to. The only one that I actually do subscribe to, if I haven't unsubbed already, um, is it DM's Toolkit? No, I'm sure that is a channel though. Um, I'll put it in the description down below. But there's an older gentleman who crafts everything completely by hand, by himself, and literally right down to the game board and everything. But it's still D&D that they're playing, and is such an inspiring. Trying to think of the channel, but anyway, just as inspiring channel for people to make stuff dirt cheap that makes this game accessible to everybody. These are the kind of channels that are out there selling these books. Just a quick side note, of course, the channel is the DM's Craft. So you can go there and give him the credit he deserves.
Mhm.
I have no intentions of having anything to do with Critical Role. I think they're a bit too corporate for me. But not to say that it's a bad channel. I've never watched it, but
Well, they're
I like
entertaining, but
the grassroots stuff. But you're right. This is all the stuff that's selling those books. The friends that I got into it with are the ones that sold the books to me. Not physically sold them, but playing the game and the way they played it at first was exactly what I needed at the time. And it wasn't Wizards of the Coast. It wasn't Hasbro. Uh, or anything that sold it to me. Had I not had the people that I gamed with, I probably never would have played.
yep. And here's another thing to consider. During COVID, the amount of subscriptions to virtual tabletops went through the roof. Companies like Roll20 had to literally emergency put in servers to handle the new amount of people they had. This was the only social interaction a lot of people were getting during that time. The only thing keeping people, for lack of a better term, and I know this is not the right thing to say, into reality with other human beings. Um, that right there, those books are still being purchased. Those games are still being played. The DMs are still buying things. The problem is Wizards isn't producing stuff.
Nope.
And the stuff that they're producing as of late has not been good. Like, I remember back in the day when first edition was around, I have probably 180 modules, handheld modules sitting up in my attic from that. You don't really see that anymore. Who's creating these things? Outside sources. Who's creating art assets? Outside sources. If they had people inside that were taking the time to create these things and they were good, then that would create even more of a competition between the people they're now trying to monetize. Instead of, like,
Yeah.
they're taking the laziest path. They're trying to monetize people outside of their corporation because they don't want to bring people in, or the stuff that they've brought in people don't want because it's not good. Like, you take the game, you build the game, and you build lore. That is it. That's what happened when you originally had Greyhawk. That's what happened when you originally had Dragonlance. You had Forgotten Realms. All of these things are huge sections of lore. They're not reprinting that. They're not reprinting any of that. They're not encouraging people to buy those. They're literally just putting out, oh, let's put something in that has a new race in it that somebody can power game to a certain way. And oh, by the way, somebody said a word we feel is bad and it made somebody feel sensitive. Let's change that too. Well, that's not on you. That's on the people playing the game. Leave the stuff as it is. And it's Dungeons and Dragons is a game of challenges. You're going to have to fight something or think your way out of it. It's meant to be a challenge or aggression based adventure. Why is it that you have to tell everybody that this is how you want things to be from now on. And God help you if it's not, because then we will revoke your license and we can give you 30 days or not even do it. And you may not even know what you said by that time. And that's in the new one too. And that is terrible.
Exactly. To kind of frosting on that with 2 points. One is on top of the thing you're talking about, and the other is more of an idea of what you're now talking about. On the previous statement, in regards to people having more access due to the pandemic, is also today, since nobody has money to live on their own anymore, and I read somewhere that more people are living at home and spending all that money on like bougie stuff, like Legos and D and all the things that they can't afford because they had to pay rent or this or that because our economy is destroyed. So they have the outlet now more than ever to make the money they need to make if they, as you said, focused on better content, which I think they could take ideas or hire people that are making this great content, like Game Freak and Nintendo did with Pokemon, the Pikachu movie, Detective Pikachu. There was a person that on DeviantArt that made realistic Pokemon art, and they were like, "We want that," and hired that person. Instead of stealing their content, they hired him to design the Pokemon in that movie. So why can't you find some of the great content creators and hire them instead of outsourcing or hiring people that don't care, that just want Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast on their resume, or that you're hiring for dirt cheap because you're a dirt cheap, greedy corporate company or corporation, and just factory resetting everything when there's people out there with minds greater than those that started this whole oeuvre that have expanded ideas that maybe no one ever thought of, that could make probably the best content ever, that you're just not hiring because you're either dirt cheap or you just want to be like, well, you're already doing something, we're just going to take your money, like Disney did with all of the Star Wars fan film creators. Who,
Hmm.
George Lucas was like, take what I made and make it your own, and Disney was like, no, that's ours now. And I disagree. I understand, but I disagree. So they have all the means to make the best content that we've ever had ever before with the best people, because we have all of D&D and all of Pathfinder and all of these other intellectual properties and inspirations swirling around that didn't exist when Gary Gygax was doing everything. So what's going on? It's too corporate, it's too lazy, it's too cheap. They want to put out plastic while making money on the real stuff that we're making without the effort of making it.
Yep. Well,
So
look at
so
look at
yeah,
what they
I
did
mean, yeah.
with all those artists for MTG. Didn't pay the artists for any of their stuff. There's people still
Mhm.
fighting to try to get the money that they promised them for their artwork. And
Exactly.
this is you touched on it with the idea of IP. And it's why I think so many of the things that I used to love and are getting remade, and I hate them because they're being quote unquote updated. And the problem is, people who try to create something are always going to get hit by the people who have all these IP lawyers because they want a piece of the. You could have the most brilliant idea out there and have this idea and try to bring it to fruition, and because something looks a little bit like something else, they will just sue you, or they'll say, give us a cut and we'll leave you alone.
Mhm.
And that's pretty much the entertainment industry as it is now. That's why we don't see any really new concepts coming out anymore.
They're basically ambulance chasers.
Yeah, and that's their job, and they get paid to do that.
Mhm.
But the idea that I like what you said. There are plenty of gaming communities, especially video game communities out there, that the content that the creators of the game interface with the community and bring the community in, and they'll give them a stipend. That sort of thing happens more with indie games than a lot of other things, but those are built, and they're built in a symbiotic relationship. They're not built in a parasitic relationship. And I think that what's going on here, I wish we'd see this kind of outcry with entertainment. Like just straight with it. Like what has
Yeah.
happened here, I think is really something kind of to behold, because you vote with your wallet. We all know this. And all the crap that's been going on, people are just like, we don't want it. We don't want it. And instead of actually trying to better themselves, they're going to turn around and go after the people who are their advertising, who are creating, who they have literally done all of the work themselves. And these people are just sitting back in the chair saying, hey, we could sue this person.
Hmm. It's kind of like
Extortion.
yes, but a kind of comparison in my mind is sort of the sequels, Star Wars. You know, we all I don't think anyone really cared about The Force Awakens being basically a New Hope. You know, I think we all expected Disney to go safe, and that's okay. You know, I mean, look at Avatar as the simplest, safest thing, and it's the the biggest IP or growing IP, or I don't know. It's the most accessible film probably in existence because it's simple. So it's okay. However, you know, for me at least, I love The Force Awakens. It was very well written, beautiful acting, music, and that to me is kind of, you know, your big three. But editing, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But then you got into The Last Jedi, which is beautiful in its own right.
Hmm.
Absolutely astonishing cinematography. Ryan Johnson is a beautiful director, not as a person, but his
Right.
directing. Um, but Moo, and however, it was not very well written and beautifully acted, though. So I can't take that away. Aside from a few things, but it was terribly written and then terribly edited, and that I think, barring some issues that people are always going to have with the IP that they love, that they also lambasted for the prequels and the originals and to the TV shows and whatever. Ignore those people, but they are a minority. But genuine criticism was treated as if we were attacking them physically, like we were about to find Kathleen Kennedy and Ryan Johnson and assassinate them
Yeah.
for touching and to some people destroying Star Wars. When really, at least how I saw The Last Jedi, my criticisms are a lot less than other people. I still don't like it, but I can understand certain aspects. But, you know, my criticism, I think, is more modest, but kind of echoes what everybody else has said. And I have no intentions of attacking anybody, but going after the people that created the entire reason Disney purchased Star Wars was the worst thing that they did.
Hmm. But that's very common these days. Any fan base that doesn't like that anything has been remastered. I'm trying to use nice words here because I don't want to over other people's thought processes. It may not be my thought process. I may not agree with them, but I'm getting really sick and tired of the minute you're not allowed to have a legitimate argument or a legitimate criticism of something that they've remade, because it immediately turns you into add one of the wonderful labels that they just like to assume you are in a toxic situation. And I think that I'm getting so tired of seeing that being the automatic response. And again, this is where I'm glad that I don't use Twitter and everything like that, because there
Hmm.
are people that just sit at their keyboard and that's all they want to call you. They want to call you these terrible names, which have become so watered down at this point that I just don't care. These people don't know you. They're just immediately applying a label to you. And I think those people need to walk outside of their house and try to have a conversation with a person, because if they ever spoke to another human being like that, they'd probably be finding themselves on the ground. And I hate to
Yeah.
say that because I don't wish violence on anybody, but back when I was in high school, if I talked crap to somebody and I got my behind beat by it, I learned a lesson from that. And
Basically, F around and find out.
exactly.
So the comparison, getting back to Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro and such, you know, what Disney did with the response to The Last Jedi was attack the people that, again, are the reason that they have Star Wars. So
Yep.
when you attack the only people paying you to make this IP continue, you lose everything. You're not going to have that fan base anymore. I mean,
Nope.
Star Wars is effectively dead with a very small mum, thanks to the Mandalorian and uh, Andor, surprisingly.
Mhm.
Uh, Same thing
Which I heard
crossing
good
over
things
here.
about Andor.
Oh, Andor is beautiful. Andor is the greatest content of Star Wars that exists because it's cinema, right? Star Wars, a lot of people go into Star Wars making Star Wars, right? Like Dave Filoni. I know we're off topic, but this is relevant.
Yeah.
Like Dave Filoni is a student of George Lucas, so I
Mhm.
feel kind of like Dave Filoni only makes Star Wars for George Lucas. As I really just butchered that name, George Lucas. Uh, but Dave, you're supposed to make Star Wars for the fans. You
Right.
don't you don't have to pander to the fans, but you're supposed to make it for us to enjoy. And I love a lot of Dave's characters. Ahsoka is my favorite, so I'm kind of criticizing him very lightly. But it definitely feels like Star Wars has become a bit of a meme of itself. And Andor takes the approach of, well, what if we took this IP and just appealed to those that love cinema, those that love art, those that love movies and TV shows and being immersed in a serious adult, not sexual, but cerebral piece of media. And at least to me, and everybody's got a different opinion, and every opinion is valid regarding your favorite Star Wars, whatever. But to me, it is the greatest piece of Star Wars content that's ever existed, and we would never have had that without Disney because of the success of Rogue One, which of course is my favorite Star
That
Wars.
was my favorite too. It very much felt like Empire Strikes Back to me.
Yeah, which of course that was the modeled inspiration, the direct inspiration, and the person that did Rogue One is doing Andor. So relating that to D&D, Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro, by attacking the fans directly, not just in a way that even Disney isn't doing. I mean, Disney's taken, cuts from fan creations that make money, like Star Wars theories, Vader thing, which, my apologies, bud, but you should have expected that. Uh, but they're not doing it to such a fascist authoritarian control as this, or maybe I'm thinking differently, but this just feels like they're wringing us dry of anything that we could have out of D&D. Basically, they want D&D, we can't have anything,
Right.
is what it sounds like. And when you attack your fan base to that extreme, like even I was like, yeah, we'll take a look at Rise of Skywalker, see how that's going. Ryan Johnson isn't in control, and Kathleen Kennedy's been kind of set aside as if she had any control. I have no clue. But nobody likes her. But even that was crap. So even with Disney, Star Wars, people are like got that glimmer of hope. Here they're like, no, we don't want you to have hope. We don't want you to have happiness. We don't want you to have D&D. We don't want you to own D&D. We just want everything for ourselves. Shut the door behind us, and you can look through a very aged, tinted, frosted glass window and think of the idea of maybe having some D&D games. That's kind of what it sounds like. Which
Yeah.
once you do that, you just as they're clearly learning, they just destroyed their entire IP.
Well, they pretty much did, and now they're going to double down on it. And it really so the way I look at this is this is going to be a hard learned lesson for them. Um, this is the one time where a fan community actually built of the fans, not of the people complaining on Twitter, but an actual community built of the fans turned around and turned their back on somebody. And again, there are other ways they could have done this. And in a way, I think it is the mindset of the person who came in to take over. They brought a very video game, microtransaction, uh, look at the Twitch streamers. If a Twitch streamer streams our game, we want to make some money off of them because they're making advertising revenue. It just
Mhm.
feels to me like this is exactly how this came about. But
Yeah.
we've been seeing these what I'm going to call, in my opinion, unwanted changes coming in D&D. And it's been coming for a while, and the communities that I'm part of, they have all said the same thing. They the new books, unless the new books, which I'm talking about, Witchlight and Beyond, they're not happy with. And
Yeah.
again, I have seen games go down this road where instead of putting in content, they make a book that has a more powerful character in it or a more powerful class to try to drive those people who are competitive, which you and I both know D&D is inherently competitive. It's whether it's the party against the DM or whether it's a player who wants to be better than another player. Very few game groups have you and I ever seen where somebody isn't trying to be competitive against the other players. Like they want to be like the superhero or they want to be
Or
the star.
or they just don't want their characters to die.
No, that too. I mean, my whole aspect of it, and I think it's a detachment also from the difference between role players, ROLE, and role players, ROLL, people who want to throw dice. Like, I'm in it for the story. Everything else happens organically. When you build a system that is more towards the throwing dice and you're not producing any lore, you're kind of putting yourself into the latter category.
Mhm. So, I completely forgot I was gonna add another point in terms of ideas. So they do have now, as I am re-hitting puberty in my 30s, uh, they do now have a video game-oriented CEO, a video game-oriented individual in general, and obviously they wanna capitalize on what these app games are doing, which is making tens of $1,000,000 a day. I mean, that's what I'm working on. I have nothing against microtransactions so long as they're not predatory like Diablo Immortal. But like I'm working on an app game as well as a Unreal Engine game for Steam, but that's irrelevant. The app game will have microtransactions, but they're strictly cosmetic. So if you want it, sure. If you don't, a person who's played it for a year can hang out with someone who's just downloaded it.
That's why I don't have
They
a problem with games like Apex Legends. There's
Mhm.
no gold ammunition. It's if you want to buy skins or if you want to unlock a character that you haven't spent the time playing, or if you want a battle pass. I have no problem with that because they give you something for it, but it's not
Yeah,
anything that is going against it. That is giving you a definitive advantage. Um,
exactly. And
but
the Go ahead.
but like you were saying, the when you're especially if you're doing a competitive game where people are your product. First person shooters, multiplayer, we are the product. That's just it. But when you offer somebody to pay money for an advantage, that's where I just
Yeah.
I can't do it.
But the strange thing is, instead of making an app game or a series of app games to capitalize on the fact that they could have just done that and still made tens of millions of dollars and still kept the entire community, for the most part, happy, they instead decided to personally attack the entire IP and fan base.
Mhm.
So this video game oriented individual decided to attack us instead of doing what a video game oriented individual should have done, which was capitalize on making D&D app games that obviously would have predatory microtransactions that people are still going to pay because people pay for them, and they could right now be making hundreds of millions of dollars a year with only a minority of the fan base complaining. Instead, they have the entire fan base complaining because apparently we are now the enemy because we happen to love D&D.
Yep. Well, I mean, look at the D&D games that have come out in the past that are basically just what was it, Dark Alliance, if I remember correctly. It was a co-op multiplayer Dungeons and Dragons game, and the only thing about it that was Dungeons and Dragons was the fact that the name was on it. That's
Mhm.
it. That's and you know, it got really bad reviews. It was buggy. They put it out. They got people to buy it because of the Dungeons and Dragons name, and then down it went. This is another thing where make a good product. They should want to make a good product. That way, they're competing with other creators that are also making product, and it makes a good relationship. Make your product better, they'll make their product better, you make your product better. You have the ability to basically give the community what they want, almost everybody in the community, but they haven't done that. They just aren't. They've given a small group of books that don't really that are either reprints of books that have already existed and only small portions of it, and they expect to now be like, oh well, we're not making any money because we're not actually trying to invest into this. Let's go after the people who basically are making the money for us. Crazy.
Exactly. Why put the effort in and invest a little bit of money on their end to get, like I said, you can hire content creators that have made beautiful games and have them work on modules and get your investment back, and you'd have people that aren't lazy and just trying to make $7 an hour working for Hasbro, and you would have gotten so much more back doing that than what they are doing, where it's like, hey, I see you got money, I see that's now my money,
I
which
mean, hell,
it's silly.
look back in second edition of D&D when they were producing Dragon Magazine, and then Dungeon Magazine came up alongside of it, and each one of them had mini adventures, items, new possible kits or classes that they had put in to basically accentuate the game, because there was no super classes in second edition. Everything was, you were a fighter, wizard, mage, uh,
Potato.
thief, bard. That's pretty much all you were. And then you took a kit, or what they would call these days a subclass, to basically kind of flesh your character out. But the subclass really wasn't there to make you super powerful. It was there to kind of help you put your character into that role you were looking for. Uh, and they weren't expensive. A subscription to Dragon Magazine or Dungeon Magazine was fairly cheap. I think that for the year at the time it was like $54, and you got every month you got 4 free adventures, some kits, you've got articles on new things that were going to be coming out, so you had an idea ahead of it. Where's that? Even if it was done digitally, where's that?
Yeah. So they did respond 4 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll read that off. We're reading things off in this podcast. This is their official response, which 4 days ago, I don't know what days exist anymore, but this is from the by B. Who the heck is B? They don't even have names. Anyway, the D&D Beyond staff. So this is their article that they've written, an update on the Open Game License, OGL, if you understand the concept of letters. So when we initially conceived of revising the OGL, it was with three major goals in mind. First, we wanted the ability to prevent the use of D&D content from being included in hateful and discriminatory products. Second, we wanted to address those attempting to use D&D in Web3 blockchain games, NFTs, by making clear that OGL content is limited to tabletop role-playing content like campaigns, modules, supplements, and you don't put an and after a period. Third, we wanted to ensure that the OGL is for the content creator, the homebrewer, the aspiring designer, our players, and the community, not major corporations, to use for their own commercial and promotional purpose, which is kind of a weird thing to say that they're exactly what they're doing. Driving these goals were two simple principles. One, our job is to be good stewards of the game, unlike the Steward of Gondor. And two, the OGL exists for the benefit of the fans. Nothing about those principles have wavered for a second, which obviously is gaslighting. That was why our early drafts of the new OGL included the provisions they did. Early drafts, quote unquote. Again, there's a lot of gaslighting in this article that this response. The draft language was provided to content creators and publishers, so their feedback could be considered before anything was finalized. In addition to language allowing us to address discriminatory and hateful conduct and clarifying what types of product the OGL covers, our drafts included royalty language designed to apply to large corporations attempting to use OGL content. It was never our intent to impact the vast majority of the community. However, it's clear from the reaction that we rolled a 1. Of course, a 1 being to non-D&Ders is an automatic failure. It has become clear that it is no longer possible to fully achieve all three goals while still staying true to our principles. So here is what we're doing. Probably more gaslighting, but the next OGL will contain the provisions that allow us to protect and cultivate the inclusive environment we are trying to build and specify that it covers only content for TTRPGs, tabletop RPGs. That means that other expressions such as educational and charitable campaigns, live streams, cosplay, VTT uses, etc., will remain unaffected by any OGL update. Content already released under 1.0a will also remain unaffected. What it will not contain is any royalty structure. It also will not include the license back provision that some people were afraid was a means for us to steal work. That thought never crossed our minds. Under any new OGL, you will own the content you create. We won't. Any language we put down will be the dark crystal clear and unequivocal on that point. The license back language was intended to protect us and our partners from creators who incorrectly allege that we steal their work simply because of coincidental similarities. As we continue to invest in the game that we love and move forward with partnerships in film, which, by the way, D&D films are terrible, television and digital games, that risk is simply too great to ignore. The new OGL will contain provisions to address that risk, but we will do it without a license back and without suggesting we have rights to the content you create. Your ideas and imagination are what makes this game special, and that belongs to you. And a couple of last thoughts, as written. First, we won't be able to release the new OGL today because we need to make sure we get it right, but it is coming. Second, you're going to hear people say that they won and we lost because making your voices heard forced us to change our plans. Those people will only be half right. They won, and
this is a terrible section, by the way.
Yeah. Our plan was always to solicit the input of our community before any update to the OGL. The drafts you've seen, we're attempting to do just that. We want to always delight fans and create experiences to blah, 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 blah. blah 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 blah. Thank you for caring enough to let it and just more gaslighting. So basically, this is all just corporate talk gaslighting us, saying
Yep.
no, 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 we were never. No, that thing that was just just to elicit a response. That wasn't very very carefully corporate worded, finalized situation saying "f you." We want money. That was that was a sample to get an idea of what you wanted. Which every sentence of this thing is this response is gaslighting.
Hmm.
It's like, "No, no, that wasn't that, but that is exactly what it was. No,
Yep.
no, that's we were actually meant this, the complete op no, you meant that." What is this? This isn't even a response. This is basically backtracking, defending everything that they did, but backtracking and claiming that, "No, we weren't actually gonna do the thing that we said we were gonna do," and decided and literally implemented contractually in our own system that we are doing this. Like, so basically this response is garbage because 'cause they're just gonna do it anyway.
Absolutely. The one thing that, because it's where they started with it, that they wanted to make the game more inclusive to people, and the fact that they have
It already was.
it already was, and the fact that they've put in that they're in the original version of it, it specifically said any content we find, any content we find offensive. I think both of us know that anybody can find any content offensive. That takes away your ability to freely create. And it doesn't matter who, and it doesn't matter why. And they're not the kind of company who, if somebody just happened to get offended by, I don't know, you made a post on social media and they find that you created something and it may not even be offensive, they could use that to go after you. And we've seen this. We've seen people be canceled for freaking stuff they said 15 years ago and apologized for in a completely different time period where whatever they said was socially acceptable.
Or they've learned otherwise and changed their
Right.
ways.
Right.
To
But
use a comparison for wrestling, like the Briscoe brothers made horrible remarks back when they're chicken farmers.
yeah,
But I literally know nothing about the Briscoe brothers just from the Jim Cornette podcast I listened to, but it's about like 10, 15 years ago.
yeah,
They understand what they said was stupid and they disagree with it today, but they can't be featured on TV because of it. So I
right.
mean there's a lot of gray area, there's a lot of black and white too. But this anybody can find anything offensive. If you want to talk D&D, um, they can be like, "Well, I hate the fact that your main villain is a dragon. I find that offensive. I love dragons."
Yep.
Well, what? So not even talking about obvious offensive issues that are going through today, just
Hmm.
small minutia of
Yep.
things, how a D&D runs a campaign or whatever. There you could find things in the books that are offensive, both in a ridiculous light and in a real, actual, critical manner. So that's very open-ended kind of thing. Basically, that's just a way for them to say, you know, you're making content. We're going to find something offensive with it, and then we'll take it.
Exactly. And that is where the danger lies. I don't trust a corporation farther than I can throw it. And I can't.
No, no
Um,
corporation.
especially ones that are going to be ruled by a Twitter post. It's like they're not going to look into it. They're going to immediately ban it. We've seen this time and time again. And again, you're going to have to be the one to defend it. Meanwhile, you've made this. They've already made their money off of you, and now they've stopped you from being able to continue. I don't like the whole thing. I
Yeah,
don't like it. Um, you know me. I am pretty much. This is pretty much how I take people on their deeds personally. Do online. I can't stand to look at people's inner voices, which is why I don't use Facebook. I don't need to see any of that. They can have it. They can have their own opinions. I'm not going to go and try to take their freaking livelihood from them. But there are people that will. And God help them if what is acceptable today becomes unacceptable tomorrow, because then anybody can be offended by it. Just
and
leave people
and
to create. And if the people don't like what they're selling, they won't buy it.
and here's the thing: Although I disagree wholeheartedly with his stance on Harvey. Water's coming back on me. Completely disagree with his stance on Harvey Weinstein. I love Kill Bill. It's my favorite film. But Tarantino kind of put it best in an interview. He said, "What's happening today is a lot like what happened, I think, in the 80s or the 70s, one of those days, one of those time frames, 80s, I think." And media entertainment is a wheel. It is constantly cycling, constantly recycling. Everything we're going through today will disappear and then it'll come back maybe 10, 15, 20 years later. So the way I see it is just enjoy what you enjoy. Who cares what somebody else enjoys? Let them have what they want. Let you have what you want. And if you don't like it, then don't watch it. Don't play it. Don't read it. Don't listen to it. You can't change it. And there's a far more important things in the world than D&D. There's far more important things in the world than movies and music. Some would say otherwise, especially if you're in the business. But
Right.
as someone who's just a fan, someone who's just a consumer of these things, we'll find our niches and we'll be okay. I don't listen to rap. I don't like rap. I have a deep respect for artists like Eminem. I don't like Queen, but I have a deep respect for Freddie
Freddie
Mercury.
Mercury. Yeah.
I don't listen to their content. I don't have to. They have a beautiful, expansive fan base of their own, taking care of them. Freddie's estate in a sense. And you know what? I love the friends that love that and they can enjoy it. I'll say my opinion if you ask my opinion, but I don't care if somebody else likes it.
And that's the
So
thing.
that's how it should be. And
You're
it's
allowed
not,
to
and
have
it's okay, but you know what? That's how it should be.
you're allowed to have an opinion on whatever you want. Everybody is allowed to have an opinion. But the thing is, if you expect me not to judge you for your opinion, don't judge me for mine.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you don't like something I like, that's great. I'm not forcing you to do it. I'm also not you are not entitled to my time to listen to you complain about it. Like, okay, go find something to do with yourself.
Hmm.
It's just that simple. But I think a lot of that stuff that's going on now is literally because people don't they they've been so surrounded by their own thought process that they never take anybody else into consideration, and they don't want to talk about it. They're so set in their ways. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
um
And
which
that's,
is
that's really pretty much all 8 billion of us, to be honest.
yeah.
To some extent, we all live in an echo chamber. It just depends on how loud or soft that echo is.
Hmm.
So,
But
you know,
remember, your average people out there that you may be talking to, they may think differently than you. They're still people. And you most likely, the people that you're saying these things about or angry with, you probably know a few of them, and you're basically lumping them in with your thought process, even though there's nothing wrong with those people.
to which, comparing and bringing that back to D&D, what I learned is everybody is kind of the same person. The no one is born something. That's your experiences, your what content within the world you are exposed to that molds who and what you are. And otherwise, at least what I've learned with the D&D group that I was with and the reenactment group is everybody's kind of the same. We all love the things that we love, and you may as well just find common things to enjoy and forget the other stuff, so long as it's not something that's an impasse, perhaps. If it is, then oh well, you don't have to deal with that person. You go about your business. But
Yeah.
relating this back to D&D and the situation at hand is they clearly just want money and more control over the product, and instead of doing the right thing and just how everybody tells us, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, instead of the corporation pulling itself by their bootstraps and kind of internally asking, So what can we do to better D&D? They're just yelling at us and say, no, that offends me, or no, you can't do that, or no, that's my money now because it's you're playing the game. And this response is a non-answer. It's a non-response. It's just saying, that corporate version of sorry, and they're going to do it anyway. So what is the end game to this? That anything we do, at some point they're just going to update the OGL and be like, well, no, we didn't like that, so there you go. Oh, your orcs, they got boob armor. We don't like that, so here we go. Even though you could open the book and there's boob armor in D&D books, just to get an example, or whatever. So it's very open ended in the authoritarian approach that they're taking, and I think the damage done to kind of wind the podcast down has already been done. And I know there's still people that are going to play, or people that are going to be loyal to Wizards of the Coast, or D&D in general. But like with Star Wars destroying the fan base and the IP in general, to the point that even Andor, the most beautiful piece of Star Wars content, did not succeed. There were less people watching that than that absolute drivel Boba Fett and Obi-Wan.
Do you think that maybe, I'll ask you, Nick, do you think that that's maybe because people are exhausted with how the other ones have played out?
Yes.
And
I think
that's what didn't give Andor the chance, because everybody I've talked to has said great things about it. A lot of people I know did not like Boba Fett.
no.
They thought he was a side character and his own show.
Yeah. And that's the point that you were also making, is the content that Wizards of the Coast is putting out, whether it's Magic the Gathering or D&D, is less than what they could be putting out.
Mm-hmm.
With Star Wars, specifically Rise of Skywalker, because Last Jedi was a whole other issue, and that's a Rian Johnson thing. It's not a IP as a whole, because he blindsided us. With Rise of Skywalker, they knew better. So, as well as Solo. And so it's a concept of diminishing return, right? The law of diminishing return is, if you keep coming back to a certain thing, people are going to be less and less interested. And now that you have completely insulted the entire fan base, as well as destroy the IP, there's going to be less and less people going to D&D and Wizards of the Coast, and more people going to Pathfinder. Which, rightfully so.
Yeah. Well, that's what capitalism does. You go find the better product, and you spend your money there. And exactly. I hope it is a lesson that is. I know there are good people that probably work at Wizards of the Coast, but I cannot help but hope that this is a hard-learned lesson for that company, and that the people who are the good people find themselves in a better job situation after this is done. Is that a mean thing to say, or is that I think
no? I think that's putting it lightly, actually, because the way that response was worded, to me, the intense gaslighting and the corporate lingo tells me that they learned no lesson.
Nope.
They will not learn the lesson. I mean, just the phrase, people are going to say that we lost and they won. But no, we won. And you won.
And let's show them what they won.
that to me says they've learned nothing. They're going to continue on the path that they're on. And the only thing that is going to change that is if you, the people, the 25 people listening to this podcast who have made 26. It to this point, maybe write that down below if you have. I have no clue how long it's been at this moment. But as we said, people vote with their wallet. The problem with a lot of these IPs, specifically Disney's remakes, is people are still going out and seeing them. People are still going out and seeing Marvel movies, even if they don't like them, still going out and seeing these sequels and franchises, even if they are critically panned, and they're still going to buy these modules. Which, by the way, I've never bought a D&D module because I'm always more of a home brewer. They're still going to buy those microtransaction apps, and these corporations never learn their lesson because they know that, and there's 8 billion people on the planet. They only need to appeal to at least 1 million or slightly more to make all the money they want to make. So, if you really don't like something like the latest Pokemon game, 10 billion issues with that, but yet they made $10 billion with it. Quote, not a exact number, but you know what I mean. So on
Is that
our
the one you
side,
have to overclock your Switch to get it to work correctly?
what?
Is
I have
is
no
that the
clue.
one you have to overclock the Switch to get it to work correctly, or it sits there and
Um,
lags out on the Switch?
who knows? Probably. I've never overclocked my Switch. I mean, I enjoy it. It's Pokemon, but that's the problem. Is all these companies know they can just give us bare minimum, and people will still come and buy it in mass. And so that's our fault. So I think we have to blame there too. We need to stop buying this. So hopefully this is a wake up call for the fan base with the backlash that we've had and the non-response that they've given us, that stop paying Wizards of the Coast. Stop buying D&D, stop buying Magic the Gathering, print out Magic the Gathering cards like Dave does. He's got like 10 Black Lotuses and they're all on 8 by 11 paper. And you know, just download them, torrent it. Like a musician is a piece of garbage, torrent it. Movies are garbage, but you want to try it, torrent it. I don't care. Stop giving these companies, these corporations, money because they're not people; they're corporations. The whole point is just to make money. So hopefully, the continued response will be a wake up call for them, because just an initial backlash isn't enough to do something, and we've learned that obviously with Star Wars. And I think Disney has now learned with the continued backlash that they can't get away with bare minimum or can't get away with hiring people with such opposing opinions. You have to find some sort of happy medium with Star Wars, at the least. That you can't go bare minimum and maintain an audience. So
Let's
in
be
this
honest.
regard,
If a corporation is smart, it doesn't have an opinion.
yeah,
It's because that point in time, and I think that's where corporations really kind of moved away from that. It's always, we have to give an opinion, or I want an opinion on it. Well, you know what? You're a person. We're a corporation. We make a product. Is our product good? Okay, that we don't have an opinion because we want our product to go to as many people as possible. And it's come to the point where so many corporations now have to have opinions on all this stuff. And they don't care. They put stuff up for one day a year and make it seem like they care about something, but they don't care. The only thing that they care about is money.
yeah, pander to everybody. Your fan base is what makes you, and your fan base is everybody. And I'm not talking about left and right and center and this and that. I just mean don't close out your product as you're now treating it. Don't close your product out to a very specific niche subset of people, which at this moment with D&D is just the corporation. Keep it open-ended for everybody, because everybody wants something that they can find themselves in and engage in and get away from this weird dystopian pay-to-play planet we live on.
And
So
I don't like to contradict, but I don't think that a corporation should pander to their base. I think the corporation should understand and listen.
yes,
Um, I hate that
well,
word
I
pander.
suppose that's what I mean. Not
Yeah,
not pander in terms of content, but let people enjoy it.
yes. If you understand the people who buy your product, you will make a better product. God,
Exactly.
I feel like we should send like our credentials to one of these companies and say, "Hey, listen, we'll fix this for you."
No, they would undercut us.
Absolutely.
Like concept artists going to Marvel CGI artists get paid 20% less than every single other CGI studio running. So, nah, we'll make our own system because I've already got the the D20 modules for the channel running soon. So, yeah, I think that's a good place to end it here. We've kind of covered a wide gambit of this situation, and I know the Word Queen and I will cover a few more niches. But
Thank you for standing by for our rant.
yes, that's it. Any closing thoughts?
Thank you for having me, as usual.
Indeed, you're always welcome. And I am NC, the host of this channel, Medieval Content, and the Talk Past podcast. And of course, thank you always, the Bruce, a dear friend. And that's that. All my little niche information, the medias that I never check, except for the Patreon and Ko-fi, are in the description, as well as the little credits there of the video. That's it. Bip, bip, bop.